The following is an Operation Podcast production.
Joining the Army after 9/11 because of 9/11, and then became a Green Beret. There's no glorification of the violence. It wasn't really like that. It just felt much deeper and much more absolute that I will regret this for the rest of my life if I don't be a part of whatever this is. Standing up in the middle of a Humvee with a 50 cal, staring wherever you go as well, that's a different perspective. And later on, GoRuck came around. It's like, this is odd. This is a business that I don't necessarily feel that great about. It doesn't feel like it's a service thing if you're in for-profit business. And so I wrestled with that a lot, and that dramatically shifted who we are and why at GoRuck. Finding myself having to reinvent myself over and over and over in a way that I did not foresee.
If you say committed to the process, you're going to say committed to the problems.
Pick up the ruck and follow me. God bless America. I'm Jason McCarthy, the co-founder and CEO of GoRuck. Welcome to Ever Forward Radio.
Jason, for somebody that just tuned in and they don't know who you are, who I am, first time finding Ever Forward Radio, why do you think they should stick around? What's going to be the value here today in our conversation?
I think there's a lot of people telling stories out there or trying to influencing and all of that stuff. And I think the value here is you've got a really authentic story, right? It's the life that you lived, and we've spent the last period of time telling it. And, the only story that I have is the one that I've lived. And it was a kind of a hard, complicated, messy, beautiful one, and still is. And so I think that's real. Joining the Army after 9/11 because of 9/11, and then kind of getting what I wanted, but not getting what I expected. And then finding myself having to reinvent myself over and over and over in a way that I did not foresee. So life's a messy place. It's a beautiful place. And I think that that's worth celebrating.
And then also for somebody maybe unfamiliar with you, can you give us the 30-second high level, who you are, what you do? Like if an Uber driver asks you what you do, what would you say?
Man, I wish more Uber drivers would ask. I've made a practice of trying to sit in the front seat, and I try to talk to them.
Really?
Where are you from? How did you start doing this? Where, and I just had one driver, he was from Sudan, and his wife had just emigrated from Sudan, because then he has kids who are American, because he got it at the consulate. And his wife was now living in Cairo, waiting for papers to come to America, even though his kids could come. And he's saving up money to get his wife to come back here. And I'm just like, God bless America. Wow. There's something too about when an immigrant picks me up, there's always some crazy story. And to me, the through line I've always found is that there's always a love of this country. And, I don't think that's very rare. But sometimes I think we're all kind of made to feel that that's rare. And I don't think it's rare. I think a lot of us just love this country, and it doesn't have to be in a jingoistic kind of way. It's just, there's a lot to be grateful for.
Can't disagree with you there, man.
You asked for my kind of elevator pitch, Uber driver story. So, grew up in Ohio. Parents were really young when they had me. Moved with my mom, single mom, to University of Florida. She was on the tennis team, kind of was the unofficial mascot for the women's tennis team. And
you were?
Yeah, I was. In Gainesville for 3 years when she was there. Fast forward through a childhood of sports and all that stuff, and graduated from college, didn't really know what I was going to do, wanted to do something special with my life, but I just felt kind of lost. Like I didn't know where my people were. I didn't know what to do, where is mission and purpose and all that. And I didn't even know how to frame it like that. And then, May of 2001, I graduate. September of 2001, the towers fell. And I'd been backpacking in Central America, trying to, find myself through whatever. And that doesn't work.
Backpacking doesn't work to find yourself?
Backpacking around the world does not work to find yourself. You get some adventures, and it's a big, giant avoidance of things. There's no kind of, what's your mission or your purpose? If you're, where's your tribe if every week or a couple days, you're just going to the next town. Like you watch the movie The Beach or something with DiCaprio in it. You're like, yes, I'm going to go, find this community and it's going to be crazy. And, my life's going to feel different and all this stuff. And I had a lot of adventures all over the world and did a lot of that stuff. But it was, starting in basic training is where the real journey began for me. And, signed up in a time of war because I wanted revenge for what happened to us in New York and in Pennsylvania and in Washington. And, the training was long, a couple of years of training to get through, and became a Green Beret. And, got to go to Iraq in 2007 with my team. Or I should say, at that point, I was on their team. Until it was our team, I was on their team.
Which Green Beret, for those that don't know, is the Army's version of Special Forces.
Correct.
Yeah, the main one.
Correct. And, what I found instead of revenge, and maybe I got a little bit, I guess, but it wasn't satisfying, in the way that I had thought it would be. And I found sort of service and camaraderie, and that's what changed my heart. And so got to go to Africa and Europe and developed really, really close bonds that will last for all of eternity with the guys that I served with, and was kind of sad to get out at the time when I got out in 2008. My wife was in the CIA. She was a case officer. She was serving in West Africa. We were just all over the place. And so something had to give. And then it was her kind of prompting why we started GoRuck.
I've heard you say in another interview that it took 2 years for you to develop the courage to join the military. Yet you said you felt a soul level conviction that was your calling after the attacks on 9/11. To have such clarity as to that's what I want to do with my life, but still have 2 years to actually act on it. Why that timeline when you had such conviction?
I mean, why do fear is the mind killer, right? I mean, you're at the backyard party and you're single and you're however old, and you see a pretty girl. Why don't you go talk to her right away? It's just, this happens. And to say, hey, I saw all these guys under green NVGs on CNN in the mountains of Afghanistan going after bin Laden, and to tell myself, well, I want to do that. That's a lot different than actually signing up in a time of war to join the military to actually go do that. And so, it was complicated by, I had just graduated from college. I'd learned my books okay, so to say. And because so many people wanted to serve America, and God bless our people for wanting to do that, it was really hard to join as an officer. So much so that I just was waiting and waiting and waiting. I applied to all the alphabet soup type places, the agency, the FBI, like take your pick. I wanted to kind of serve. I did know in my heart that I wanted to be in the infantry. I wanted to be on the front lines as close as I could get. And
did you enlist, or you went commissioned?
So then I enlisted.
So, interesting. So you went through college and then enlisted after?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So I enlisted in 2003. And I was living in LA at the time, in Santa Monica, not far from here at all. And I remember going to Barnes & Noble. I didn't have any money. And I went to Barnes & Noble, and I think it was the one right on the 3rd Street Promenade. And I was reading the Rolling Stone articles that were coming out about Generation Kill. Oh. And yeah. it was and they were talking about the march to Baghdad, which kicked off in March of 2003. And I was just like, man, I am missing this. And it wasn't from there was no glorification of the violence. It wasn't really like that. It just felt much deeper and much more absolute that I will regret this for the rest of my life if I don't be a part of whatever this is.
The reasons why anyone joins the military during a time of peace, but especially during a time of war, I think is so fascinating, because it is such a personal journey and personal process and personal choice to literally sign your life away. But especially during a time of war, you and I enlisted the exact same year, 2003. But to hear your reason compared to mine is so different. There's a lot of common ground as to, I recognize what is going on in my country. I recognize what is happening in the world. And I recognize the highly probable danger of me choosing this job, choosing this career, choosing this life. But for whatever reason, kind of for me, it was like this personal choice, this legacy of continuation of family service that superseded any decision-making process of, I think to use your words, revenge, or feeling like if I'm not a part of this, I'm going to regret it for the rest of my life. There's no question there. It's just, I think that is one of the most personal choices besides maybe, who you pick or who you ask to marry kind of thing. The thought process where your head and your heart are going into that, it can be all over the place, but yet we all make the same decision.
Exactly. The heart of the matter feels kind of similar. You would have regretted it for the rest of your life. You felt like you owed something. Your parents, whoever you wanted to be as a person. And it just, for me, it took 9/11 for that to happen. And at that point it was, people started coming out of the woodwork that I didn't, I served. My grandfather's service became a little bit more interesting to me, which, he passed away when I was still in training, and I didn't really get to talk to him that much about it. But, he'd been an artillery officer in Korea, and he told me Fort Sill was, one rung below hell, especially in the summertime. I'm like, okay.
I don't know. Fort Leonard Wood in the summertime is not that far off. That's for sure. Where did you go to basic? Bragg?
I was basic at Benning.
Benning, yeah, excuse me.
Echo 258. Drill Sergeant
Echo
Hester.
210. Echo 210.
Drill Sergeant Hester. My basic training number was 420.
I don't remember my basic training. I do remember my unit was Echo 210. Yeah. We were called, we were the trailer park boys because they had it was such a mass influx of people enlisting at that time in Leonard Wood. They had overgrown the barracks. So they got these trailers out in the field, and we were just out there. We were the trailer park boys. Echo 210, Drill Sergeant Del Coro was our master drill sergeant. Most sadistic motherfucker I've ever met in my entire life. Ran like a 5:30 flat mile, maxed out his PT score every time.
Did he care about you?
Oh my God. If I walked up to him today and told him I was one of his soldiers in basic training 23 years ago, I bet he would still care the same way he did then.
Yeah, that was my experience too. I'm still in touch with my drill sergeant.
No shit.
Yeah,
no
literally.
Shit.
And it's one of those things where, man, he was so hard on us. I mean, so hard.
Yeah.
And it was a lot different than what Special Forces training became. It was a lot more, you're going to do exactly what is more programmed, so to say.
Well, that's the point of BCT.
That's the point, right? But man, then he would all right, gather around, right? And he would explain what we were going to face or who we were trying to be or.
Take a knee, soldiers.
Yeah, exactly. And man, I was just grateful for his mentorship and the way that he kind of, helped raise us or bring us into the Army.
At any point during basic combat training, before you got into selection school and all that, did you ever feel like I didn't make the right choice, or this is way more difficult or way different than I thought?
The biggest questions I had was after I told my family that I had enlisted, which I did not tell anybody.
You enlisted and then told the family.
Yeah. And that was just because, there's just this expectation. Well, if you're going to join, which is already way too scary, then you should definitely be an officer. And I'm like, yeah, I tried that for the last couple of years. At some point, you gotta go. And so, then it's sort of, well, maybe I can talk to such and such who can, start pulling strings. And I'm just like, look, this is gonna.
Then I'm not their choice than yours.
Yeah, I'm not owed anything special in this life. This is a decision. But that was really hard. There's this sort of, well, can you get out of it, right? And it wasn't. That's just a natural reaction. I mean, I was wrong to. It's like I was wrong, but could I have done it differently? I don't know. I mean, maybe it's these kinds of what ifs and hypotheticals that drive you crazy, and I really try not to spend too much time on them. But that was really hard, and it was a lot harder on my family than I wished. And some of that is just look at how people have lived since the beginning of time. Life is hard. It's hard. We're not all living 3 blocks from Starbucks in a with a perfect roof and climate controlled everything since the beginning of time. I mean, there's a lot of loss, there's a lot of pain, there's a lot of blood, there's a lot of sacrifice, and I felt compelled to serve. But
it was more than that. I mean, there are a lot of people that join the military and they pick a job, any MOS as we call it. And then you go through that, and then you kind of, you realize this is for me. Maybe you reclass, you re-enlist, you extend, you work your way up, maybe go green to gold, officer candidate school, warrant officer school. You kind of start at the bottom, basically. But you said, nah, I'm going to enlist straight away. I'm joining special forces. Have you always had that kind of mentality of, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it at the most elite level?
I mean, I was an athlete growing up, and I always really enjoyed that. I mean, it was, hey, I wanted to be the best that I could be. And I was not, I was not like some great superstar athlete, but I was okay. Mm-hmm. And I really enjoyed the team dynamics, and I enjoyed kind of excelling inside of that. And so this one was just a little bit more clear to me. I mean, it was just, sure, if I said, hey, if I'm going to go play basketball or play tennis or whatever, both of which I played growing up, I wanted to be the best, but it wasn't the same thing. It's kind of, okay, well, practice harder and then you can score more points in the game. Mm-hmm. Okay, great, got it, right? But there wasn't this kind of unattainable goal that you could say, if I run through all of these gates, mm-hmm. like you're, Frodo shepherding the ring to Mordor or whatever, right? If you run through all this and then that's mission, mission success. And that to me is a rite of passage in a world that is missing them. Mm-hmm. For too many folks, we're missing rites of passage because why? It's too hard, or it's unknown, or you might not make it, you might fail, it might not work out. All the trace it back to fear or whatever you want to trace it back to. But I just saw what was going on in Afghanistan in 2001, and then I saw what was happening in the invasion of Baghdad, and I wanted to be as close to that as possible. And so at that point, it seemed like Special Forces was the way to go. And that can lead to other units and guys get into that once you're in it. But that felt like the tip of the spear to me. And so it seemed like a good goal to go after.
Are you familiar with, SADE, Special Operations Team Alpha? They're the special electronic warfare, like usually in the SIGINT community, signals intelligence world, which is more my branch. I was in military intelligence.
We worked with them pretty closely in Basra and in southern Iraq.
So me and one other guy, to my knowledge, maybe a couple other guys from my unit at the time, when I was stationed at 470th MI Brigade out of San Antonio, Texas, we were actually assigned. This has all been declassified now at this point, but for 2 years of that time, we were assigned to NSA. They had a compound out there, and the SADE recruiters knew my first sergeant, and he was like, "I got a couple guys for you." So we wound up kind of getting pulled in for this SADE recruiter, and that was the first time in my military career up at that point where I realized what I signed up to do. Like, I'm doing that job, I'm serving missions, running support, doing all this stuff. But there's another way to use a skill set that the military gave me and that I've been working on for a few years in support of other missions and other job types. And actually it was that seed that got planted. Long story short, I was only an E4 at the time, was a specialist. And they wanted our skill sets, but they needed somebody at least an E5, a sergeant or higher. And so hey, you're high-speed soldiers, go do your thing, go to the promotion board, blah, blah, blah. So that conversation actually of being considered for SADE put me on the path to ultimately getting me injured in this war game training that got me medically discharged. So it's just wild to kind of know that there was a path maybe I had in mind, but then in pursuit of that, not only did it not happen, but it completely changed the trajectory of my military career and the rest of my life. Did you ever experience anything in your military career to where by choice or kind of by, strong persuasion, they're like, hey, we have something else in mind for you. We want your career to go this way, your job to go this way. And then just one day you're like, how the hell did I get here?
I think the entire experience was a red pill for me. It's from the time I joined, I had one version of what I thought I was going to, experience in the military. I kind of saw it more in terms of how World War II was fought.
How so?
So, the guys signed up, they went to war, and then they came home, and then they reintegrated, and they seemed to just kind of go about their lives, right? And they did this thing, Band of Brothers style, and afterwards they came back and they, managed stuff at home, and they became businessmen, and they became, fathers and husbands.
Went back to the factory.
Exactly. And I kind of expected it to be like that, sort of a modern day check the box because my country needs me. Mm-hmm. And so I would have been ignorant to a lot of what's best in life, and also to a lot of what's worst in life. Because once I like to travel and go places and meet people, get into adventures. When you travel to a place and you have to travel through it, standing up in the middle of a Humvee with a 50 cal staring wherever you go as well, that's a different perspective. When you see violence and you're a part of it, it changes your perspective. And it also kind of changes how, the best of people in this world is when you're in service at that level to somebody else, like the guys on your team. And that is a drug. That was as addictive as it gets. And so, I have too many friends that aren't here anymore. I would have known none of that, I think about, and I try not to do that, although being here now and, back in Santa Monica area, which is where I was right before the Army, it kind of took me back to that sort of mindset. Like, I need to train really hard. Me, right? I need to look like Rambo or Arnold or whatever it might be in order to do this. And it was still kind of selfishly motivated, even though it was a love of country and a desire to serve and revenge. It was still very me-centric. And the red pill that I took, right, to join the Army, there's just love and sacrifice are intertwined very deeply. And that was, you can know that. You can watch Band of Brothers, or you can watch Saving Private Ryan, and maybe you cry at the end. I always do. But when you feel it, it's very different, and it leaves a lasting mark.
I see feeling kind of coming up for you a little bit. See the emotion coming through in your face and your eyes. And we can say just as much as we said, and I feel like I know exactly what you're talking about. There's this through line of being of service, and especially in the military, that it's just so immediate. Anytime I meet any other veteran, it's even better if they're like the same branch, same service, same, even similar bases or whatever. It's just like this through line that is an unspoken experience, unspoken bond. Like sharing more of my military experience and even kind of connecting with other veterans. So I enlisted in 2003, same as you. We're a country of war. 03 to 09.
Two wars.
Yeah. And then some. And those are just the ones that, most America knew about. So my time in career, I was the guy, kind of just painting these dots together now. I was kind of not far from like this. I was the guy listening in, maybe had a microphone, getting information, providing intelligence, disseminating, working with different clients and different groups on ground. And
clients, I love it.
The client.
You were the guys in one of the gun trucks going out with us when we were doing it. You had all your super spy stuff all attached to your truck, and
you work with like a DRT guy, the dirt intelligence.
I don't know.
It was like this really high speed, like a offshoot of SIGINT basically, but primarily worked in like cellular communications.
We had all that.
Yeah,
we had all that.
So I bring that up because actually my first real world experience in hearing the evils of the world, like I can still hear, it was a woman. It was this woman's voice describing what she and her, before I got into like the Russian missions, I ran intel for Central America, South America, Mexico, human trafficking, sex trafficking. And I'll never forget this woman's voice about how she was describing what they were doing to this group of people they were trafficking. The like age groups.
Is this in English or Spanish or what?
This was in English. Yeah.
Okay.
And their plans for them, how they were delivering them. And this was literally just miles down the road, not far from the American-Mexican border. And like that imprinted on me so hard to go like, I know that I joined the military and I know that we're a country at war, but right now that's not that war. So there is this level of evil going on in the world, in the background, like all the time. And so my point here is that I was the guy hearing that. I was the guy gathering all that information and then providing for you guys to go be the boots on the ground. And I've struggled a lot with feeling like I missed out, like I didn't really serve my country in the full way that a lot of other people did. If you could say, you know, from kind of being on both sides of that, you know, would you ever want somebody to have had that full experience? Do you feel like anybody that serves, who goes through and has their experience, that's what you're meant to have? You know, because I'm not alone. There are a lot of people that kind of stay, you know, on the strategic side, so to speak.
I mean, this is one of the most common things going. I mean, in our, say, the Green Beret community, it's like, oh, you weren't good enough of a Green Beret. Got it. Because you only did X number of deployments and only did X number of missions and you could have done more. I mean, this is the most common thing. I mean, and for me, the follow-up to your earlier question was, you know, I mean, my wife was in the CIA. I was in Special Forces. I was kind of planning on joining the CIA and the paramilitary branch. And later on, you know, GoRuck came around. And so it's like, this is odd. This is a business that I don't necessarily feel that great about. It doesn't feel like it's a service thing if you're in a for-profit business. And so I wrestled with that a lot, and that dramatically shifted who we are and why at GoRuck. But, you know, it's what you're describing is a very common thing. I don't know anybody that really doesn't have that, frankly. I mean, I wish I could have done more like this and this and this. And I think so much of it is not understanding. It's this difference between regret and wishing that something could have turned out differently. And if you separate those out, I mean, hey, if I would have done this and this and this, then this friend might not have died. If I would have done this and this, then this friend might not have died. If I would have been here on the next deployment, then this friend might not have died. Or, you know, I mean, I lost 2 guys that I deployed with just a couple years ago. They were still in the same company. They'd come back through towards the more senior end of their career, and they both died. And I'm like, man, we were just in the halls together in, you know, 06, 07, 08.
Line of duty?
Yeah, they were both still Green Berets, you know? And it's kind of like, well, these what ifs and all of these kind of, I wish I could have done more. I wish I could have, you know, gone into more rooms with, you know, barrels forward. I mean, it never stops. So wherever we are in that journey, I mean, you know, I saw enough violence to want more, and that's a complicated feeling. And you were around enough violence to want more, and that's a complicated feeling. Because why? You know, why? I mean, there's something about, there's a personal side to it, that this is a challenging thing to prove yourself and test yourself. And then it's, well, this is about the team.
Right, yeah.
And the team is kind of it's about as noble of a thing as it gets, man. I mean, you're on a small team doing as required or whatever you're supposed to be doing, and it's very dangerous work, and you're in it together, and you feel like you're just carrying the flag of justice with you wherever you go. And so you want more of that, and you wish you could have done more and more and more and more, and you wish you were still doing it. And, you know, and so the thing is that at some point, all warriors stop serving on the front lines, and everybody has to make their peace with any kind of transition and the natural reinvention that comes because of that.
I'm so glad you bring up that word, the warrior mentality. I think most veterans can probably relate that warrior mentality. I think especially people, service members like ourselves that joined during or served during wartime compared to peacetime, your op tempo is completely different. No matter what your MOS is, at least in my experience, you're always training for war. Like the training schedule was always fucking full. And then just one day, you're out for whatever reason. You ETS, you separate, you retire, you medically discharge, and all of that goes away.
The music stops.
The music stops. Literally overnight, you go from having a support system, you know who to go to for what. You've got brothers and sisters to the left and right of you. You've got a roof over your head, food in the fridge. You have all your basic needs, including community, covered. And then you sign out for the last time, and then it's just gone. And then especially people like myself and you, not to put words in your mouth, but I feel like there's another layer of transition that makes it more difficult. And it's because that warrior mentality has been just imprinted even more. Like I got out in 2009, and no bullshit. There's not a day that goes by that I'm not, when I go to a restaurant, I sit in the back corner. I got to make sure I have all my exits. I'm like going through worst case scenario. If like this person crosses the street and they pull a weapon, like it's just constant.
Or you see an active shooter at a school and you think about what your response would be.
Exactly.
And then you go into a school and the hard part comes when you have to start thinking like the bad guys, which is how you properly plan to defeat the bad guys, is you have to think like the bad guys. And so you bring that home with you, and that's baggage, man. That's baggage. And
did you deal with that? How did you process all that?
Yeah, every day I deal with that. I mean, it's not, this doesn't go away. It's kind of like, where you're from, or, who your parents are, or how you were raised, or these experiences that you have to learn how to kind of control them, or else they will control you. And so the more that you know yourself, it's okay. This is just part of the deal. And you don't have to be fully understood everywhere you go by everybody. You have to kind of make your peace with how you're going to live your life in the world, and just know that that's something that you're going to do.
Well, during your transition, you gave yourself a new mission, and you kind of had this idea. I know you and your wife kind of noodled this idea of taking this concept of having a go bag during your career, a GoRuck, and you kind of created and brought a new mission out with you during your transition. And for those of you that don't know, watching the video, GoRuck, they make these bad boys here, these weighted vests, and some incredible apparel. I'm actually wearing the shoes as well. We got 10-pound plate in the front, 10-pound plate in the back. Like, why this as the new mission?
Man, it's one of those things that I can recount the bullet points along the way. What I cannot describe in any amount of time is just how messy the whole thing has been, and how important it has been, is, and will always be to kind of understand what our Northern Star is and why we keep seeking that, because it's really easy to all of a sudden you're going here and there, and you're just kind of all over the place chasing whatever you think might be worthwhile. Like what actually matters here, Like take all the mission planning and the mission prep and all that stuff and say, that's great, the 100-page operations order, but like, what are the 5 W's, And you need to know those really well. And that's kind of the Northern Star. And so for us, it was basically taking the Special Forces way of life and kind of bridging that. And that became just the life that I was leading, and we were going through that at that time. And so it was very much a live problem. You got to be around there and kind of do that with me to a certain extent. I mean, it took a couple years to design the first rucksack, which was GR1. And then, the problems were just infinite along the way, and the problems were infinite after, and they're still infinite. It never stops. You just have to kind of...
If you're going to stay committed to the process, you're going to stay committed to the problems.
Yeah. And commitment is such an important way to look at it. I mean, are you in this because you want... Why? Why? When it gets really hard, and it will get really hard, what's your why? And that's one of the things that you learn at selection or any of these, cool kid bag dump schools where you show up and, you dump all your bags and it's just chaos and it's just, they suck. And at some point in those, you will be forced to confront yourself. And it will be, why do I want to do this? And if you don't have a good answer, you're not going to be there very long. And so for us, it was kind of a hobby. And then I went to business school on the post 9/11 GI Bill, which I'm grateful to the American taxpayer for.
I use that as well. Yeah.
I mean, it bought me some time and it helped me. That really helped my transition. And GoRuck was just kind of a hobby for then, but he kept pouring more and more and more money into it. And then I had a bunch of inventory and like, all right, well, this is a live case study at business school where you're studying all this stuff. And so just a million accidents, mistakes along the way, but kept coming back to my roots. And part of the roots were, team building through physical fitness. And rucking just happens to be the foundation of Special Forces training, something that I did not know when I joined the Army. I mean, you see people with backpacks on or whatever, and you're like,
to say the least. Yeah.
Like, what is that? Like, whatever. I guess
where are they going with all that stuff all the time?
Yeah, why do you need? Why is it so big? Why is there so much?
That's just what you can see. Not to mention, the body armor underneath all that.
It's horrible. And yet
full battle rattle.
And so, in training, got built up to be able to ruck a whole lot better and faster and stronger because it's years. I mean, you start out and it's, you're rucking 20 pounds. And then, before you know it, it's 45 and that's your minimum. And then it's 85 and then it's 125. And, it just kind of got used to it and didn't really understand even that rucking was something to train for almost. Man, I did ruck, but I didn't have a plan. It was just, okay, I guess I got a lot of rucking to do in this Special Forces training.
Well, it was orders at the time. It wasn't, let me rotate this into my workout protocol.
Right, because I'm going to get stronger abs or something. It had nothing to do with it. It was, this is going to be really healthy for me. Not really a ruck run because we were going such long distances that I didn't find, running is more like sprinting, and that was not really necessary. So it was a ruck shuffle pretty much all the time, 10 miles, 12 miles. That was a pretty standard afternoon until I started to train with really heavy weights because I knew what was coming. And then that was just a slog, man. When you got 120 pounds on your back, I mean, it's horrible. Every step hurts and
sucks. Yeah.
Your body gets used to, your body's capable of a lot. Yeah. And
until you stop and realize half your toenails fell off, you've got blisters in places.
Oh man, I loved it when my toenails fell off. God. Right. And then, you start develop because it's one less thing to worry about. And then you've got, you start to get calluses in all the right places. It's like, oh man,
keeping moleskin in business. Yeah.
I am winning. Look at my calluses, right? Come here, look at this.
God, it's chafing. Man.
Well, you got to use the lube in all the right
Spandex,
places, man.
Baby powder,
all of it.
Yeah.
All of it. And so that became the foundation of what I was doing with GoRuck, not what we were building in terms of manufacturing of things, because things are only things. The first kind of Special Operations Forces truth is humans are more important than hardware. And so when you look at that, no matter how, it's the same in business, war, love, and life, it's all basically the same. And if you look at building things, that's fine. But it's hard to pour magic into things if they're just widgets or it's just a backpack, it's just a coffee cup, it's just a microphone, it's still just a thing. So how do you kind of bring it to life? And that was exciting to me. So came up with some events or an event called the GoRuck Challenge, and that brought people together. It became Fight Club with backpacks really quickly. Meet me on the street corner at 1 a.m., details not forthcoming.
Yeah.
And that was... the timing was good on that. There was still kind of this, people wanted to know more about Special Forces. And then we had special operations guys from all the branches. So SEALs and Delta and Force Recon Marines and PJs and Air Force and all sorts of that kind of with different backgrounds underneath this umbrella running lots of different events. And they were all rucking events. And so, you look back now, and we just kept doing it and doing it and doing it. And you look back now, we've put on over 10,000 of those all over the country and the world.
I've done a couple of them, yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, I guess that's how you build community. Keep showing up, be consistent, come often, bring the people together. Even if the numbers are a little too low here, oh, well, this is really good, let's do more of that. And then it's, you're playing Tetris every year on where to go and how often and all that. But you have to keep showing up.
I heard you mention in another podcast, quote, I'm going to blow my cover to go all in with GoRuck. You were talking about kind of the early days of leaning into social media and promoting GoRuck on Facebook and things like that. What do you mean by that? Did you really feel like, was that the mentality of, if I choose to go all in on this new endeavor, I'm blowing my cover? Was it still kind of that military mindset of not letting yourself out?
No, this was very practical. What really inspired me, the first kind of sacrifice post 9/11 that inspired me was Mike Spann. He was a paramilitary officer for the agency. He was killed in the John Walker Lynn prison uprising, right?
Oh, he was the first casualty, right?
Yeah. And so they told his story because it was kind of, you need someone to rally around and his service and sacrifice. And his story was something like, I owe to, is really what it came out of that. And so, I mean, part of the plan joining the Army and Special Forces was, I want to serve in that unit, right? Whatever that was. And I went through the hiring process at the CIA, and they basically said, hey, you have to serve in special operations somewhere, and then we'll pick you up. And I'm like, okay, thanks for the last year of interviewing. See you later. And so, as I was transitioning out, my wife had been, now she's in the CIA. And I had met a lot of people that were in the paramilitary side of the CIA, and they were like, hey, when are you coming over? So there's this kind of fork in the road. And I'm like, oh yeah, let me go to business school real quick, check a box, right?
Yeah.
Let me check a box real quick because it'll be better for whatever, It looks good in your file. Terrible reasons to do things. It'll look good in your file.
That's what they tell me in the transition assistance program,
Yeah, exactly. Go back to school. The go back to school thing was actually great. It led a different route. And so I started GoRuck, at least publicly online, with a pseudonym Facebook account and did all sorts of stuff like that. And because I wanted to keep this other option open, well, you keep doubling down on a business and it just became something to where nothing was working. I don't know anything about digital media or Google or Facebook or all that, black magic, whatever it is that goes on in the dark web.
To say the least.
But what I did know how to do was bring people together on street corners all over the country and the world and build teams through, physically demanding, grueling events. And that proved to be something that really lifted me up. And I think people got something out of it because it became a rite of passage for them. And I got to give back. It felt like I was helping other people in a different kind of way than what, write a book, a self-help book. Like, how is there such thing as a self-help book again? If someone else, anyway, I digress. So blowing my cover kind of felt like, well, I'm burning this ship to go to this place that was the reason why I wanted to go down this path in the first place. And so it was very practical and very real. And it's like, okay, it was a conscious decision.
I think it's no surprise that you've had such great success with GoRuck because of your ties to the military. Personally speaking, anytime I find any brand, any product, any service, any local small business that I kind of like, if I find out it's veteran owned, veteran operated, or any affiliation, I'm doubling down until they kind of screw up or like it really sucks. But, as a veteran, I flock to other veteran things and products and services. So I feel like it's no surprise that kind of initial traction, I mean, you definitely had a lot of hard work, but, veterans, I think, support veterans. But bringing such a military concept to the world, to the civilian world, I don't think always translates. Why do you think you had such success with bringing probably one of the most fundamental, painstaking, embrace the suck components to the military, as is putting on a bunch of weight and walking for however long? Why do you think it clicked for civilians? And why do you think it's so successful in a non-military group?
I think I could relate to a lot of the people who showed up from even myself before I joined the military. So these people that were maybe endurance junkies or looking for something else out of life, a little like you're looking to squeeze a little bit more out of the marrow of life, you know? And so from the outset, it was really important that I did not want this to be like boot camp. There wasn't yelling and screaming and all that. It was kind of, hey, this is really going to suck and we're going to smile a lot, right? Or else it's going to suck even worse until we learn how to smile. You know, and that's such a military thing in its own right, but you have to learn to smile when it really sucks. I mean, the guy on your team or your company or whatever it might be who made you smile and laugh when it was horrible, I mean, those are the people that you want on your team. And so taking that kind of mindset to it and out of the gates, it was like, I don't care if you're male, female, black, white, gay, straight, purple, pink, polka dotted, whatever, pick up the ruck and follow me. And so it was this very kind of open and inviting way of bringing these like-minded people, adventure seekers and, you know, people that were looking to just get a little bit more out, like to take the harder path. Those folks, and then like finds like. And it cut through military and civilian lines. And it was just this really hard thing. And yeah, you know, there was our time in America in 2010, 2011, realize you're getting into the Afghan surge, you're getting into, you know, bin Laden was killed. There's a lot of things that were still very kind of intriguing about special forces types. And that was good timing. We didn't
That's a really good point.
plan on that. I mean, now it just kind of falls flat because all the books have been written and
Zero Dark 30 came out. Yeah, all the things have been done.
I mean, how can you write a more bin Laden got shot in the face, right? I mean, how can you write? That's what started the wars. Okay, well, who's going to top that now? You can't keep going more and more and more and more. It's just more at that point. And so, you know, these things come in cycles. And so for us, the timing was good. And I think the message of inclusivity was good. We did not choose political lines and we still don't. I think that it's fine if people want to do that. But it also it's a divide and conquer tactic that is not something that GoRuck was meant to do out of the gates. It was because that's how it was in the military. I mean, once you realize that people are coming from all over the country, you know, there were brown people and black people and white people and, you know, people of all different kind of
I did the one a couple, like 2 months ago at this point now, and there were guys that flew in from Jersey, from Canada. There was one guy that literally added a leg to his trip from India to come. It was like, I think like maybe 80 guys.
It's crazy.
It was crazy.
And you get this melting pot. And I think that, you know, when you look at America, it's a melting pot. When you look at the military, it's a melting pot. And it's not, you know, a perfect diversity. It's not, you know.
Is there such thing as perfect diversity?
No, there's just a lot of diversity. And I want to celebrate that, right? It's a lot of people from a lot of different backgrounds that look differently. And there you are, you know, standing in formation at 4 a.m. on a cold Georgia morning in December, January, February, and you're all there. And then later on, you're getting rained on like crazy. And then you're rolling around in the mud together because someone did something wrong.
Someone showed up late.
Yeah, there's always something, you know, and then you're sitting out there, you know, shining your boots and you're just in it together. And nobody's talking about, you know, who'd you vote for and what's your politics. And you might get to that later with some folks, but it was such this kind of pure experience that I had in the military, and bringing the best of that to GoRuck was kind of the goal. And so it's been really great, and it really lifts both my wife and I and our entire team up, that it's really hard to do some of this stuff. And yet there's the value in it. You know that you've earned something. And then when you say, okay, so, but at its most basic form, put 20 pounds on your back and ruck the dog for, 20 minutes twice a day, you're going to get a little more challenging walk. Your dog is going to, maybe you'll want to go a little further. Your dog will get a little stronger too. I mean, you can apply the fundamentals, and there's brilliance in the basics here. And the basics are carry weight. Mm-hmm. And so being able to make that accessible as well, and still do it in a way that feels very honest and pure and on brand or on message or serving the mission in that way, that's been really special as well.
When I see what you guys are up to at GoRuck, for me, it's familiar and therefore feels comforting. I see loam green, I see tactical gear, I see rucks, I see weighted vests like I had, and I see military. And for me, it's just, it just clicks. But for people who have not served, I feel like they view the military way of life, the military training, as this like crazy, elusive thing that they, maybe by doing, I can somewhat be a part of. And I think especially for a lot of guys, it's being sold, it's being packaged, or there is this kind of allure of, if I go do this and train like them, then I have kind of tapped into that warrior mentality. And I feel like there's like this sweet spot where both of those kind of come together. Mm-hmm. Would you agree? And, how would you kind of have one side convey the feeling to the other?
I'll start with what I don't like.
Okay.
Is when this kind of the mystique of military training gets packaged and put on social media, wherever, and it becomes this kind of enigmatic magic button. Mm-hmm. Like, hey, train like this and you're going to have abs that look like this dude that serves in the military. I mean,
don't feel like you're a man, do this. Let us yell at you for a weekend and you're done.
It's just kind of, it doesn't work. Mm-hmm. Like, boot camp works only because it's boot camp. And people don't want to come back to people yelling and screaming at them to do that. You have to feel like it's a real community, a real kind of tribal thing in its purest essence. And so, yeah, I mean, look, there's a lot to gain from the simplicity of military training. And for us, the simplest is put a little bit of weight on your back and go for a walk. I mean, that's a new fitness category, rucking. Carry that weight.
It's a category on the Whoop. Now you can track it as a training modality.
It is. It's hiking / rucking. In the Whoop, the problem with Whoop is nobody yet has done it where there is a weight that you input the weight, because it dramatically impacts it. So right, yeah. I wore a Whoop for a while, and I'm supportive of anything that encourages people to get more active. What we're pushing for is you need to get more specific on this, because it's not the same thing. I mean, if there's elevation, sure, that's hiking. I mean, hiking is just rucking in the mountains, right? I mean, and so when you say rucking, you can do it anywhere. But if you have 45 or 60 or 20, it's different depending upon who you are and where you are and which zone you're in. And the Whoop gets kind of complicated, or it gets kind of confused by a lot of that. So a lot of my stuff, I learned a lot from that, especially about recovery and sleep and how my body responds to that, but it didn't really understand my fitness.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely got some room to grow in there. I'm sure
they'll do it. They're on it.
The crew over there will come out. I'm sure there's an update maybe next year. Yeah. They're very aware of the rucking movement.
So yeah, the CFO works out in my driveway.
No shit.
He's in Jacksonville, and I graduated high school with their growth office. How do I say it? I mean, peacoats and cargo pants are also military, right? It's just they've expanded beyond that, right? You see them on the fashion runway all over the world. And these cycles sort of come and these cycles sort of go within those examples of fashion. And so for this, though, it's to say, look, people are already hiking. That's rucking. How should you train if you live here? How should you train if you want to go climb a big mountain, like a 14er in Colorado or more? You should put a rucksack on your back with some weight and go to Runyon Canyon, or go to the smaller places around here, or ruck your dog around the neighborhood, and you can add more resistance with more weight. And if you're me and you live in Florida and it's completely flat, add even more weight, or find some staircases downtown at the building that lets people come and train there. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to make this so that people don't have to, I'm not selling boot camp here.
Right, yeah.
Right?
You're habit stacking, to shout out James Clear from Atomic Habits. I mean, case in point, when I got it, my wife, she took it for a while just with no weight. And then I think she added 10 pounds. And if we were just in the house and, doing errands, rearranging shit, she would just put it on.
Yeah.
I mean, so you're already doing the thing. You're already living your life, but you just make it a little bit harder, challenge yourself a little bit more physically and mentally, because you got to make that choice to do the hard thing physically. Next thing you know, you take it off, things get easier.
I mean, your body adapts
Yeah.
too. I mean, the three things about rucking is it's very simple, it's very low risk, and it's challenging. That's a difficult combination to kind of ascribe to other
It's hard to get that in the
modalities.
gym. It's hard to get that in a lot of other exercise modalities.
I mean, compared to say running, I mean, running is very simple. It's very high impact, so it's greater risk of injury, right? And it's certainly challenging, but you're missing the low risk side. I mean, you can point against other things, but I guess the bigger things, I think people should do what works for them. This is just something that nobody talks about. Like carrying weight, it's pretty primordial. And so our bodies have been developed to do this. And so, yes, it has military roots. And yes, we are also talking about more people than just say military folks to try this, because if you have a body, this will benefit you. And so how does it kind of expand while we still remain true to ourselves? And that's a lot of fun.
People are talking about it now. I think 2024, I kind of live in the health, fitness, wellness world, so maybe I'm a little bit biased, but 2024, I have seen, I'm sure a lot thanks to the efforts of GoRuck, rucking as a form of movement, physical activity, and exercise just blow the hell up. And a lot of credit to such, organizations like GoRuck. I know, you were on Peter Attia not that long ago, and Andrew Huberman, talks about it. Of course, Andrew Huberman could come out with his, nose picking protocol and people would want to do it, not to discredit anything he does. But I think now we're in such a world of content and people that know their shit, come from the scientific background like Attia and Huberman, and kind of present things in a way that we have known is beneficial for a long time. It's truth for a lot of people already. But then someone does it and someone shares maybe a little bit of the how or the science behind it. And all of a sudden, everybody's doing it and it's the new thing. And Huberman, actually, I pulled up this article from Huberman Lab, and he talks about how he explains that, quote, this is a part of his weekly fitness protocol, rucking, includes a long ruck or weighted hike on Sundays as part of his cardiovascular exercise routine designed to tap into various forms of endurance. So I want to kind of shift into, what we're talking about, this has been a way of life for us, and it's your business now, but there is some amazing science behind it. There are a lot of physiological benefits. And, I'll link some articles I found from Huberman and some other people talking about it, break it down in way better ways than I can. But what we're really talking about is long endurance training, steady state, low intensity, steady state training. And there are just incredible benefits. And we're looking at strengthening muscles and bones, improving cardiovascular health, mental clarity and focus. Can you walk us through, maybe, if you had to, in your interpretation, your experience, what are the 2-3 scientific ways? What is actually going on behind rucking as to why it works and how it promotes health?
Yeah, so start with the absolute basics, which is we don't move enough. We as a people don't move enough. And so you start to consider, it's not because we don't know that. It's because we just don't. Our worlds are not engineered enough. You see a place like New York or these walkable cities. It's okay, more people walk there. Great, got it. But I think that there's this kind of, how do you give people a little bit more license to do something that feels more challenging? It feels a little bit grittier. Feels like they're going to get more results, And so rucking offers that, right? If you move more, just in general, I think that's a better way to live a life. If you have a bias for activity, I think that that's a great way to live a life. For me, I'll just tell you personally, if I kind of start with sleep and I say, I want to sleep well tonight, I know for a fact that if I don't move my body, I will not be able to fall asleep and I will not get a good night's sleep. And then tomorrow will not be good. And so if you want to stop that and you want to feel better, then start with the things that you can do to sleep better. So, and I'm not talking supplements or anything like that yet. I'm talking the absolute basics of move your body to exhaustion. That is
exhaustion being the key word here.
Exhaustion is the key word. Okay, let's start with a veteran who might be going through transition, might be struggling, like I was in circa 2009 to 2010. And I have a dog that needs to go outside. And Java was like, hey, I need to go out. Well, short walks, like, come on, Java, let's go back. And he's pulling me. Short walks turned into long walks, turned into runs, turned into rucks and ruck runs. And before you know it, I'm sleeping better. I feel better the next day. It seems like I'm able to kind of take on the day a lot better. That's a gradual thing that just happened through increase in physical activity that led to exhaustion, that led to sleep. So that's kind of because I'm always reluctant to say, okay, well, this and this and this will magically happen. I mean, you still have to move. If you're rucking, that is movement. That is like saying, if you eat better, you'll feel better. This is just an absolute thing, right? So for me, it's a good way I get steps in, and I'm pretty religious about tracking my steps, right? I mean,
what's your step goal?
12,000 is my goal.
So your goal or your minimum?
That's my minimum. Okay. So my average is pushing 15.
Okay.
Right. And a lot of that is with a ruck on. I mean, I'm in front of a computer a lot, but if I've got a phone call with a buddy or something like, hey, I just grab my ruck and I ruck around, so to say. So, what does it do? It just makes a walk more challenging. It's really, really simple. And you can pick the weight from 5 pounds or 10 pounds to, I usually ruck 45. And your shoulders are back. Right? So it's posture corrective for me. And that means that if you can open up your chest and own your breath, then you own the pose, right?
Ooh, I love that. Go back, say that again. It's too good to
If you can open up your chest and breathe, then you own the pose. And if you're that's a Kelly Starrett quote. He taught me that.
Mr. Supple Leopard himself.
To own the pose, you have to be able to take a full breath. And I think that's so simple, right? So if you have too much weight or something, you start to hunch over and you have to pull your shoulders back. Well, the rucksack kind of helps you want to pull your shoulders back. And so that's really great. And then, the list kind of goes on, but it's really good for me mentally and physically. And then I do it with friends. So it's also good socially.
The social component is huge. Can you kind of talk about that? What are maybe some extra health benefits do you think people might not fully be aware of because of the social component? We know we're stepping into a hard situation. We're walking long distances, weighted vests, but what do you think is the secret sauce because of the social component for our health benefit?
Or you're walking short distances. Like this is not some insurmountable thing. This is not some brand new fad machine that's going to turn into a towel rack. It's not a band that's promising you, a 12-pack abs. It's like, look, put the weight on your back and carry the weight. Build it into your life or dedicate time to it when you get more comfortable with it. To say, hey, let's go out and try a 12-miler and see how fast we can get at 45 pounds. I mean, that's an advanced movement. You're getting into shuffling and you're getting into things that I would say, let's not scare off people that maybe this is just a license to move and get results a lot better, right? So you're going to have increased heart rate, increased blood flow, and all of these things are great it's resistance training. So you've got, lean muscle mass is being preserved and even gained, right? I mean, bone density, that's a thing as anybody ages. Because there's resistance and because you're moving, there's positive bone density gains. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. It's not because I'm sitting here these are just facts. I mean, it's just so basic. Move and carry a little bit of weight to add resistance and a little bit of extra challenge.
Kind of shifting into like the business side of things a little bit. When did you start GoRuck, like officially, publicly as a business?
2008.
And so here we are, 2024. Are you now where you thought you would be when you started the company in terms of reach, growth, revenue? Where are you now in 2024 in comparison to where you thought you would be when you started?
It started out as a hobby for some years. And so fast forward a little bit through that. I mean, I think on some level, it was all just kind of like an art project with funny money for some years. And there was no tie-in with reality.
Yeah.
Hey, if we keep doing this is going to just happen magically. And it doesn't work that way. I mean, the mechanics of our business are we have to build something and we build it from the ground up. It takes years. And then we have to build it. And so then we have to scale it. And then we have to get it in inventory. And then we have to put it on a website. And then someone has to buy it. And if we don't have it, we can't sell it. So it's a very cash intensive business like that. And that's just hard. You have to do turnovers of inventory and you have to get smart and all that stuff. So I think our brand is as good as I had hoped for. And that was what was most important to me. And I'll give you my first measure of our brand, which is that I feel like we have used our platform and our mission to honor where we came from and to pay it back to others to sort of inspire, challenge, and equip people to get out and embrace the suck with friends.
You guys make some top-notch equipment. I mean, again, I'll pull up the weighted vest here. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, you guys have, it's like a lifetime warranty on this shit.
You break it, we fix it.
I mean, this is like ballistic grade shit. I mean, it's military grade equipment. How do you go about making something that is both a sustainable business model, cost effective, that the public's actually going to invest in, but you can like literally put that level of guarantee on?
Yeah, I mean, that was something out of the gates that was, hey, let's just do it. Figure it out. If we go bankrupt because we build bad stuff, like, I guess.
So it's just full burn the boats mentality.
Yeah, we burned boats. It's called the Scars Lifetime Guarantee. We launched our first website. I had that on it. You break it, we fix it, in essence, right? Doesn't matter where you bought it. And, you know, it was just, first off, I never thought out of the gates that, you know, founded by Green Beret, made in China, never had a great ring to me. So we didn't do that. We started out with all American manufacturing, and we still do a lot of American manufacturing. We've had to expand out a little bit, not to China, but we've had to expand out a little bit just due to scale constraints. But the quality and the rigorous quality, I mean, I could walk you through. I don't personally know how to sew, but I'm going to learn with my daughter. With my daughter, actually, we're going back and learning how to sew together in kind of a, you know, family business stuff, right? But I mean, there's just so much. Other places are cutting corners everywhere they can to save a nickel. And before you know it, you have finance folks picking zippers and, well, this other fabric's cheaper. Why would we use, you know, this good stuff? It's like, well, you know, and nobody's willing to fight that. It's just the business starts to be run by lawyers and finance people and all that. And for us, that's just, if we're building bad stuff, and we're not, but if we were, this is how I play out worst case scenario stuff, like my version of hell. And so then some guys that I served with get our stuff and they're like, man, this sucks. Ooh. That's my version of hell.
Yeah.
Right. Imagine they're downrange.
No.
And they get it in their APO, their container. Like, what happened to GoRuck? What happened to him? Like, there is no amount.
You know they're going to let you know,
There is no amount of money that is worth it to me for that to ever happen.
Yeah.
And so we just don't cut any corners and we overbuild everything and we make sure that it just works.
Where are you at currently in the business? Are you at a point of we're holding the line? You're at a point of holy shit, things are going so well. We're like shooting for the moon next. Like, through the lens of the business of GoRuck, where are you and where are you going?
I mean, rucking will be bigger than running. That's a pretty big goal. So we're still kind of after creating a new fitness category is a difficult thing, right? A new modality. And we didn't invent it. This is very important, right? I mean, this has gone on. The first rucksack was, you know, whatever the hunters killed to bring back to the tribe, right?
If you can't be first to market, you got to be best at what you do, right?
And so, you know, the Roman legionnaires had to pass rucking tests. This is something that goes in every infantry unit in all of the militaries, from the British SAS selection, which impacted all of our selections over here, et cetera. This is a proven thing. It just works, right? We're just kind of bringing it to more people. And I owe because of that. This is not the me show. This is not a company called McCarthy, right? And never wanted it to be. It's about a whole lot more than me because I have been a very, very small part of this community that I'm grateful to have been a part of. And so, you know, rucking is something that I want to exist outside of me, even outside of us, and we're just driving it. And so it's a great mission focus for us, and we keep building gear and laying tracks along that line, purpose built for carrying weight. And guess what? When you get into shoes, that happens to be something that feels good when you live on your feet all day too, because say you weigh 200 pounds and you're on your feet all day doing whatever, you're a blue collar worker doing real work. God bless you, right? Wearing shoes that support you when you're on your feet all day. Well, that's what we were doing in the Army. I was on my feet all day. I didn't have a desk. I had a locker, right? There was nowhere to sit down. It was, you don't sit down. You're always on the move. And so living that life and building products around that. I mean, as Rucking continues to grow and grow and grow and grow, our high ground, just where we're sitting, goes up and up and up and up.
Have you ever had a rock bottom moment in the business where the inventory is gone, the orders are in, the cash is gone? Have you ever had a moment where like, shit, this is it, this is the end? If so, could you describe it for us, and how did you get out of the situation?
So I've never had a moment where this is the end. Mostly because we never took any outside funding. We always invested in inventory a lot, and our inventory has always been good. So then you're getting into, well, how do I discount? And we don't say love to do that, but it's impossible to perfectly predict the right color and the right style at the right season all of the time. You're gonna, too much of this, not enough of that. But the first time this happened was 2013. And, we had just gotten out of whack on, we had too many people, and people spread out all over the country, and had a lot of inventory, but couldn't pay bills. So had to do a round of layoffs. And, then it was like on Monday, we had our first sale, and, cash went up, inventory went down, costs went lower on the business side. And those things are not fun, and they're very painful. So the goal is to get smarter, so that you can kind of
get leaner, get more efficient.
Yeah. I mean, you have to kind of figure out what works for your business on whether it's payment terms or what are lead times. Because if I say, hey, I can have as many of those vests as you want in 6 months, right? It's just how many do I have now, or how many, and what's that cost? And what are the net terms on when you're paying? And, it's
speaking the truth, man.
It's a lot. It's a lot. And then when you get into SKU growth and you start getting into shoes and apparel and gear, and, there's just a lot to manage. And the only way that we've been able to kind of successfully manage that is by making sure that the gear is good. The gear and the footwear and the apparel, it's good. So if we have to, we can turn inventory into cash. If our projections are off, it just means that we have more inventory than cash. And so we have to kind of right size that ship. And
you can turn one into the other if you need to.
Yeah, I mean, and Christmas comes once a year, and it's sort of, well, how steep of a discount do you need to do in order to move these units or those units? And I don't suspect that this ever ends.
Okay, I like it. Kind of getting towards the end here, one question comes to mind. I would love to kind of just hear your military mindset. What do you think is the biggest lesson you picked up from your time in the military that directly serves you on a day-to-day basis running a business like GoRuck?
Figure it out. I mean, the expectations of a Green Beret, you are an apex problem solver. That's really what you are. And there is just a never quit button. And you have to live that. And that's hard. I mean, it's somehow it seems easier in a war environment than it does in a business environment. It seems very simple and clear. Good guy, bad guy. Go, do, execute this, right?
It is so much more binary.
And here it's just the confusion around the politics and the social stuff, and, just the way you can get attacked for whatever, for doing whatever, and whatever forum is over here and over there. And it's just the takedown mentality. And it's when you get to kind of, look your enemy in the eye, it's simpler in a certain way. And yet, I'm not yearning for that either. It's just, it's all hard. It's just, this is, I struggle with the fact that in serving your country, you don't talk about how much money you make. You don't talk about how big is your house, or how big is, you talk about how rich the officers are. That's a thing, right? And so when you're on the
talk
team,
about the difference in BAS.
but you get your pound of flesh out of your officer. Here's how: you steal their credit card, and when you all go to the bar together, you make sure that everyone ends up on the officer's tab, and you do that every time you go, because the officers always pay. That's the rule. And so, you like, this is just what it's like to be on a team, and it's great. Yeah. And thanks, Walt, for all those bar tabs you picked up and, circa 2006 to 2008, whatever, all over the world. And, and so I think the why is probably the harder part. If I really distill it down, like, why do I want to be in business? I mean, I don't really care about put us now or put us 10x now in sort of business size terms. The world would treat us differently, but my sense of the mission is the sense of the mission. And I say that because if I go back and take away 10x, my mission then is my mission now. It's kind of, but it's convoluted because you're chasing these kind of false idols. Well, how big is your business? And, what's your profit margin and all these things. And we stop asking ourselves the questions that matter the most, because in the Army, you get to take them for granted. Like, I love serving my country. I really love serving that dude and that dude and that dude and that dude. I love these men, and you don't get to do that now in the same way in business or in whatever we're doing. And it's much harder. And so it's important for me to kind of go back to that style of grounding. I mean, I'm still very motivated by the mission that we have, and I want to make a big impact on the world. And that's not necessarily easy to be around. It's not necessarily easy for other people that are a part of that. That just hasn't changed, though. And what has changed is being in business is different than being in the Army. We're still ourselves, and we still have a Northern Star, and we're still chasing it. And we're really proud to be kind of grounded in who we are and chasing it the way that we are.
It's kind of like we're shooting the same azimuth,
Yeah.
Do you think patriotism is dead right now?
So my boys specifically are 9 and 7, right? And they have so gotten into baseball. And it's been awesome. My wife and I, we both played a little baseball growing up, but we didn't continue. We didn't play in high school or anything. She ran, I played tennis and basketball, and she played tennis as well. And they just, if their friend group, they've taken to baseball and they just love it. Right. And, the fields are less than a mile away. You can ride your bike there, and they're loaded up with their ruck and their bats and their mitts, and they're practicing in the driveway it's called the Hurricane. It's like a bungee cords attached to a ball that you can hit, and it comes back, and you can keep swinging it. And, and they just love it. And when you go to this ballpark and you see all these kids, and we just had opening day, there's 400 kids out there, and there's coaches that are, dads and moms dedicating their time and their effort and their energy to raise and help raise these people, these kids, through baseball, to be a part of something bigger than themselves. And there's a big, giant American flag in the, in the outfield where for the main field. And, the national anthem is there, and people are, someone comes out, and probably a 12-year-old girl came out and sang the national anthem on opening day. And, the hats go off and the hands go over the heart. And patriotism is thriving in our life. And, somehow it's become a political thing. And I find that disgusting. It's the same things with GoRuck. I don't care if you're left of center or right of center. The flag stands for what unites us. and, black, white, pink, purple, polka dotted, striped. And we see that at, say, a baseball field, which has nothing to do in theory with the military or any of those kinds of things. It's just people there that are really glad to be a part of these kind of community activities. And, you sing the national anthem before the games and people take that seriously. And this is just one small town in America. And there's so many small towns in America. So
I come from one.
Amen, right?
Yeah. Well, getting to my last question, I just want to say, thank you for your service. It's been great to sit down with you. And I love the products. I love the brand. I love the mission. Like I said, I'm wearing the shoes. I've got another pair at home. I've got the weighted vest here in front of me. And I feel like this would be very meaningful for me. So I just want to give you, this is like an EF branded military patch. I created these years ago as just kind of part of the brand and the mission we do here. But it means a lot to me because what I do means a lot to me. And I'll share with you before that Ever Forward actually, this is not that far from kind of what, its origins were. My dad picked up Ever Forward from his unit's insignia, their creed, the 116th Infantry Regiment, the Army National Guard unit out of Roanoke, Virginia, before he went active duty, served in Persian Gulf, 101st Airborne, Rakkasans, air assault, all that 2 scoops of horse shit. And and so I want to just, give this to you, man.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate that.
I don't know if you got any extra spare Velcro around, throw it in the bag.
I do. I've got a little extra Velcro, and it means a lot more like anything. I mean, a patch is just sort of thread and Velcro, and unless you give it more meaning. And it's the same for the American flag. I mean, it means what we're willing to put into it.
Absolutely.
And it all means a lot more to be here since the name of the podcast comes from your dad, which is also a reason why you served, which is, a big reason that I'm here right now to chat and meet you. So it's been, it's been an interesting day kind of going back where I was before joining the Army.
Literally your old stomping grounds.
Literally came straight from there. And then
so on brand, this guy rucked here.
Rucked here to come and talk about, transition and service and all that. And it's been really meaningful. So thank you.
You're very welcome. Welcome back anytime. Thank you again. My last question, Ever Forward, those 2 words, what do they mean to you?
It's kind of what I was just talking about. Everybody, if you don't have a Northern Star, you need to start asking yourself some really hard questions in life. Like, who do I want to be? Where do I want to go? Right? What do I want to do with my life? And I think that nobody ever regrets serving something bigger than themselves. And once you find that, Ever Forward will become a way of life for you because your cup is full and the Northern Star is always that direction. And you're just sort of following it until your time on this earth is up, and that comes quickly. And it can come too quickly. And so it's best to get going.
Well, from Staff Sergeant Tuning.
Well, thanks, man.
Thank you so much. This was incredible. Let me get you out of here. And where can everybody go to connect with you and learn more about the mission of GoRuck?
I mean, our website is GoRuck.com. You can find me on Instagram. I'm on there occasionally. It's Jason J. McCarthy.
Okay. Everything will be linked down in the show notes for you guys. If you're watching on video, in the description box. Go check out GoRuck. They do incredible events all over the country. Odds are you've probably seen one. Just to, take what you're doing, make it a little bit more difficult, and just keep doing it. Next thing you know, you're going to wake up or look back and you're like, holy shit, I did that thing. I made these friends. I reconnected with my friends. Maybe you're like me and you see your HRV go up, your recovery's improved. Just so many benefits to this beyond the physical. I'd really encourage you guys to check it out. And it's a great familiar movement that really, honestly, what I've loved most about GoRuck and, putting on weight or a pack is just the intentional solitude. I don't know about you, but I feel like every veteran I've talked to, the best memories we have about rucking is like just being in the fucking suck, but yet just so at peace. Like you one foot in front of the other, you got your front and your rear covered, and it's like meditation, you're in your mind, you're in your heart. And like, that's what I love most about it now.
Awesome, man.
All right. Well, Jay, let me get you out of here.